as you mentioned, I'm from Nicaragua originally. That's where my family came from. But I grew up with one foot in the US, one foot in Nicaragua. So my whole life I've been comparing the two along many different parameters. So when I was a little kid, I was always impressed going to elementary school in the Midwest. People would say this is the land of the free. America's all about freedom. You know, you have freedom to do this, freedom to do that. That confused me because I could do whatever I wanted in Nicaragua. But there were rules in the US. So, and I remember vividly thinking, in Nicaragua I used to climb telephone poles. And you cannot do that. Nobody will let you do that here. And as a little kid, I was like, how is this freedom? And that's, you know, I'm physically more free there. And as I got older, I started to realize the nuance. So when I was in my teens, I remember we were driving down a one-way street in Nicaragua, and there was traffic coming against us. We were going the wrong way on a one-way street. Again, thinking, we have freedom to do this in Nicaragua. And everyone coming this way was telling us, no, no, you're going the wrong way. You have to turn around. And the person that was driving was just this really charming guy, really friendly. And he just talked his way through this crowded one-way street till we got to where we were going. Imagine doing that in the US, you'd get arrested. That absolutely would not happen. So as I got older, I began to realize the differences in nuance with regards to freedom. And it really hit home, was it 2 years ago, 2016, the elections? We were living, my wife and I were living in Nicaragua, and we had observed the American elections from afar. I didn't get the chance to vote, but we had the New York Times up on our projector. We had made some cocktails and some popcorn, and we were watching the results roll in. And it was a pretty good night, and then I realized we forgot to hit refresh on the web page, and when we did, suddenly the entire country was red. And it turned in from a celebration into a little bit of a lament. And I don't want to get too political, but those were our preferences. And it was sad to see what I perceived to be this wonderful democracy electing an undemocratic president from afar where there was nothing we could do. But at the same time, there was an election in Nicaragua for president. And I use election very loosely here. It was hardly an election at all. And we were living right in front of a building in a major city in Nicaragua where people would go and vote. It was one of two buildings in that city of about 100,000 people. So on election day, we had front row seats watching the participation of people, Nicaraguans going to cast their ballots. And we saw maybe 100 or 200 people go vote in a city of 150,000. And as the election results came rolling in, the government said 75% voter turnout, massive voter turnout, the biggest we've ever seen. The president got elected with a massive majority, despite the fact that nobody voted. And this is a president who, he's been on and off a dictator since 1979. So he sexually molested his own stepdaughter. He's murdered dozens of people. There are pictures of him loading drugs onto a plane with Pablo Escobar. And he was democratically elected in Nicaragua, democratically elected, of course. So seeing the difference between these two political structures, the US, where an undemocratic person was democratically elected, Nicaragua, undemocratic person, completely undemocratically elected. And now, seeing the difference since then, the US, the institutions are so powerful that it's kind of restabilizing. Now, one person can't really destroy it. You can't really fix it too much, but you can't destroy it either. In Nicaragua, this one person has systematically dismantled and destroyed our entire democracy. It's just like a little thing fluttering in a hurricane. And since protests have erupted in Nicaragua in April, 400 people have been murdered by this dictator, by the government. Innocent students, younger than most of the people here, have just been killed. People imprisoned, tortured in prison. We just had elections again in the US, and we see a slight turnaround, a correction of that problem. So now, with a little bit more knowledge, experience under my belt, I look at the difference, and I much prefer to live in a country that maybe doesn't let me climb telephone poles anymore, but that auto-corrects itself, that fixes these major trends, and that has strong enough institutions to be able to correct for these little whims in public opinion. So, thank you.